Hello and welcome to a special Nurses Day 2025 edition of PSA Today. I'm Angelica Jacobson and today we're shining a light on the heartbeat of our public healthcare system, our nurses. But not just as caregivers and professionals, we're also talking about their rights, their power and the union work that protects them. PSA is one of the country's strongest voices for public sector workers, including the thousands of nurses holding our healthcare system together. Joining me today is Kagiso, Olivia Mashigu, and a very special guest, Refilwe Maku. Refilwe, briefly explain to us a day in a nurse's life.
Well, a nurse's day starts around 3 a.m. in the morning. That's when you start preparing yourself and preparing the kids, because mostly we are family orientated. So you start framing your mind, like positioning your mind, preparing your mind for the day that is coming ahead. Then we know that we normally start around 6:30 at work. That's when you arrive, especially those who are working in the wards. You arrive and then you have to take a report, patient to patient, bed to bed, from the night staff. Then you can release them, then you'll start your day.
Okay, Olivia, Nurses Day means a lot to people for different reasons. Some see it as a time to reflect on the challenges, some see it as a time to appreciate the care. What does it mean to PSA as a union?
I think for PSA as a union, Nurses Day is an opportunity for us to celebrate, people like Refilwe, to celebrate those that are looking after our public, that are working under very strenuous conditions. I think that we know from, the amount of nurses that leave the country to go to other countries that the nursing conditions in our country are not ideal. And when we are celebrating Nurses Day, we celebrate the fact that they do work under those conditions. We celebrate the fact that they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We celebrate the fact that they look after, our loved ones. And we also celebrate the fact that they form a large part of what we do on a day-to-day basis. It is our job to protect people like Refilwe. It is our job to protect those that are working under the conditions that they're working under, to make sure that they are as comfortable as they can possibly be while performing the functions that they need to perform. So for us, Nurses Day is a day to celebrate them in view of the many challenges that they face, and also to stand alongside them to say that we are there to protect them.
Kagiso, PSA has been doing the work day in and day out. What does the support look like behind the scenes?
The support happens in two fronts. Firstly, on an individual level, where the PSA represent members in grievances, misconduct, and disputes. If you look at the case of PSA on behalf of Obogu versus MEC of Health Gauteng, she was employed as a clinical manager, medical services, and for 5 years, the department alleged that she was overpaid an amount of 794,000. So they wanted to recoup that amount, of which she disputed. On the 15th of April 2015, the department withheld her salary. She approached the PSA, the matter went to the Labour Court, and the Labour Court issued 3 orders. 1, the deduction was unlawful. 2, they interdicted the department from further deductions. And 3, most importantly, the Labour Court declared Section 38 of the Public Service Act as unconstitutional. Now, that was the act the department was relying on to make that particular deduction. Because this section of the Public Service Act was declared unconstitutional, it had to go to the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court agreed with the Labour Court and confirmed that indeed Section 38 of the Public Service Act was unlawful. That is a landmark case, and that was an individual case. On a collective bargaining level, the PSA represent members and negotiate for improved conditions of service and matters of mutual interest. Just last week, the PSA at the Bargaining Council, the Public Health and Social Development Bargaining Council, the PSA is one of the largest trade unions there. We negotiated and we engaged with the South African Nursing Council on the issue of the deregistration of nurses to say that how can we work together so that we do not have the situation where nurses are being deregistered.
Olivia, let's talk about what nurses are up against in 2025. We've heard a lot about understaffing, long shifts, and also safety issues, especially in rural areas and emergency wards. What key challenges are nurses facing at the moment?
Sure. I think there's structural challenges and there's also, the day-to-day challenges that nurses face. I think I'll start with the structural. The ones that have been brought to our attention and the ones that we know of are where there's a shortage of medication in clinics. We do have clinics that are, especially the clinics that operate either in rural areas or semi-rural areas, where there's a shortage of medication. Then obviously in the big, academic hospitals such as Steve Biko and others, I think Steve Biko is actually kept quite well. I think it's actually well managed, I must say. I'm not here to market it, but I must say. But there's obviously, gaps that we have in the system where there's shortages in machinery, scanning machines and all of these things that there's a shortage of, that has a direct impact on how nurses are able to give the kind of service that they're supposed to be giving in rendering services to members. So there's those kind of shortages that obviously compromise, the work that nurses do. And I think the unfortunate thing is that in communities where there is a shortage of medication, it is often attributed to the nurse, which is the strange thing. Because people then, when they get to a clinic and there's no pills, they blame the nurse. They don't know that the process is not that the nurses don't procure medication. The medication is procured through an SAM process, but people do not know that. So that is why you'll have the unfortunate situations that you sometimes have where the community goes head to head with nurses in clinics and in institutions. We would have seen the issue in Limpopo, in Chweni, where there were 2 nurses that were abducted, they were taken, they were sexually assaulted. These are some of the challenges that we are currently facing, within that space. We have an issue, obviously, of staff shortages, which is leading to extreme conditions of fatigue and dysfunctions within nurses because they are working under conditions where they are extremely fatigued because they are understaffed. You would have noted that during the SOPA, there was a lot that was said about staffing issues within the Department of Health. A majority of those staffing issues is amongst the nursing fraternity, where there's not enough people that are there to do the work. But also what we saw recently is a spate, what my colleague Kakhisho has indicated, the issue of registration of nurses. The South African Nursing Council is not doing that enough. Fast enough. So you have nurses who should have been registered in 2024 who still to this date have not been registered. And that obviously is placing an unnecessary burden on Refilwe and those like her, because you would have heard Refilwe, she's saying that she's either supervised or semi-supervised. So, if those registrations are not being done, she's working without supervision. It means that there's an increase in her level of being in a position where she can be charged. And then once she's charged, then what happens? The South African Nursing Council usually actually expels nurses for 1 year to 2 years. That is how harsh it is there. The conditions under which they are working. So those are some of the challenges that we have identified within the space that they're working in.
Refilwe, what challenges are you facing and how can the PSA assist you?
So what we would like the PSA to do, including, before I forget, the community care workers, they are part of nursing, but the department it's like they are not including them there. And those people, they are part of nursing, part of Gauteng Health, but they are not being catered for. Number one, they get raped on the field, they get assaulted, everything happens to them. No one cares about them. What I would like to emphasize for PSA to do is make sure those people, they get danger allowance because they fall under nursing. They are nurses. They nurse our community. They report to a certain clinic, then they dispatch to different areas. They nurse patients. They are nurses on the lowest category of nursing. But they are not being catered for. Number one, the employer doesn't even give them a place where they can report. They don't have where they report. And let me applaud PSA for giving them shelter. The other day we went to Maria Ranto. They received a Wendy House where they can report and do their statistics and do everything. But where is the employer? Because they are working for them. Those people have PSA. They belong to Gauteng Health, but Gauteng Health doesn't care about them. And those are the most vulnerable because they go to areas where there's all sorts of thugs and everything. So my plea for PSA is that when we go to bargaining councils, we need to look at that. They need to receive automatically danger allowance so that they are compensated when they come across such challenges.
Kagiso, it's not only about working conditions, it's also about health and dignity. We've seen a lot of media coverage from PSA Durban office about a doctor who allegedly committed suicide due to workplace bullying and harassment. How is the PSA stepping up and pushing for change?
The Durban incident is rather unfortunate and heartbreaking. This is something that should never happen again. The PSA is frantically opposed to any form of harassment. So the PSA is pushing for employers to ensure that they do have programs like employment wellness programs in place to be able to provide the kind of support that would be needed by those employees, either mentally or otherwise. Further to that, the PSA is also pushing for ensuring that there are policies in place, that are on harassment in line with the Code of Good Practice from the Department of Employment and Labor on the elimination of harassment in the workplace and the policy on harassment that was issued by DPSA last year. So the PSA encourages nurses that are encountering a harassment to say that in instances where harassment shows its face, they must report so that one, the victims must receive the necessary support, and then two, the action must be taken against the perpetrators, and then lastly, in instances where harassment is reported but no action is taken, the department can be held vicariously liable. So the PSA is going to continue pushing for ensuring that there is safety in the workplace.
The PSA has a lot of benefits for healthcare members. One of them is the indemnity cover. Refiwe, are you aware of that cover?
Yes, I am. I'm the advocate of it.
Great.
So I ensure that my colleagues, they know about it. There was this thing of the employer saying recently that if you are held, you were liable for any medical legal hazard, they want you to pay half. They pay half if the case is won somehow. So imagine myself with the salary that I'm earning, where will I get a million if that person was awarded 2 million? So that's where PSA come in. Then I will be covered. I know even when I am sleeping, I know that I'm covered. I don't have to worry.
Liv, let's talk about wins. Can you share a victory or a breakthrough that the PSA recently made for nurses?
Okay. I think probably one of the biggest breakthroughs that we are making is the road shows the South African Nursing Council is currently undertaking. With regards to nurses, we don't know how far that is spreading, but obviously the impact thereof is the training of nurses in areas that are necessary for training to be done. In our own space, there's two kind of wins that we have made. One is with regards to the uniform in Gauteng. We have managed to get an agreement within the chamber for those nurses that did not have uniform, for them to be able to get the uniform that they would need. I know that for someone that might mean nothing, but the truth of the matter is that a nurse who does not look good probably is not going to feel good, and it's not going to also look good for the department or wherever it is that they are placed. And also some of the wins, as Refilwe has indicated, there is a Wendy house. There are Wendy houses everywhere actually that are now being put up because we do have projects, CSI projects that we are running as the PSA, where we are partnering with clinics across the country. So it ranges from Wendy houses that have been given to community health workers to refurbishing of clinics and hospitals. We refurbished a child section in Chawelo. Here in Gauteng, but there's other work that other colleagues are doing throughout the country, where they are fixing up hospitals, they're fixing up clinics, they are mending whatever needs to be mended. So things that yes, naturally should not be our responsibility, but because we recognize that these are our communities, and we recognize that we need to also play a role in trying to alleviate some of this animosity that exists between the health institutions and the community, because in some institutions, actually, one of the biggest problems is water, believe it or not. So one of the projects also that we run, and some of the things that we have done is also putting up, water tanks and those kind of things. So our way of trying to solve and also weigh in on some of these problems and the challenges that are within health can be seen in our CSI footprint. So that has been, one of our greatest wins.
Kagiso, we're in 2025. What is next? What is the PSA's priorities for the next year and beyond?
There are three priorities. Firstly is the provision of nurses' uniform. The parties are currently engaged on the provision of uniform because nurses are due for uniform. Now, what the PSA is advocating for is for this uniform to be centralized, its provision to be centralized, so that the quality can be of the same to signify the dignity that the nurses deserve. Secondly is the issue of staff shortage. The PSA is advocating for the Department of Health to employ more nurses. The PSA welcomes the announcement by the Minister of Health that there will be 200 additional nurses, but we do not believe that that will be adequate. The PSA will push for more appointment of nurses to can deal with the issue of staff shortage, which leads to issues of overtime, which is just a short-term measure. And then finally, the PSA will continue advocating for the safety of nurses. The challenges that Olivia and Refugio have spoken about, to say that our workplaces, our hospitals are not safe. So the PSA will continue championing for environment that is safe. In the long term, beyond this, the PSA will continue to advocate for our hospitals and clinics to be conducive so that our nurses will not have any reason to want to go overseas. Thank you.
And then for nurses listening who might not belong to a union or who feel a bit disconnected, what would you say to them?
Firstly, I'll say to them that for the mere fact that we've got labor legislation guarantee them the right, does not guarantee the fact that there will not be any form of unfairness perpetuated against them or discrimination. So they must join a union. Must join a union of choice, a union like the PSA, so that we can champion, defend their rights and their interest. Now, the PSA has got a track record of more than 100 years. We are dedicated, we are a professional union. So I'll say to those nurses that are discontent to say that not all hope is lost, come and join the union of choice, we will assist you.
To all the nurses out there, thank you for your care, your compassion and your courage. The PSA will continue to advocate and fight to build a stronger healthcare system for all of us. For more on how to get involved or to learn about the PSA campaigns, visit our website and social media platforms. Please engage us so that we can make a real difference in your life. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and keep showing up for each other.